Well, try it that way. How about that? It's Wall Pass Wednesday here on SDH. John, here, you there. Thanks for dropping by, as you always do. And I guess that was the shortest way to make sure that the the show could function instead of me dumping out and doing something and then waiting 35 seconds before I actually get everything squared away. So, John, here, you there. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday. And it's kind of a cool Wall Pass Wednesday because of what we've got going on. Obviously, we've got MLS being back, everybody online on a Wednesday. Dylan Butler is going to join us to kick off hour number 2 and our look at everything. All the matches, all the juice boxes, all the refs, all the things, all of that. So that's like hour number 2. That's the monopoly. We do have some news and things that we've got to get into involving stuff overseas. You got Pep Guardiola, you got Tanda Eckert, you got a lot of newsy news to get into this morning. So we'll get into that, and we might go a little over this morning. I think we probably will, just because of the sheer information, the sheer amount of information that we got. But something really cool coming up in about 10 minutes. And as an author, I'm always drawn to other authors. And when I found out that David Arrowsmith is a very, very busy man, and especially during the football season, when you've got not one but 2 books to talk about, and this is also part of it, that we're bringing him in to break down his book, Killing Maradona, and then he's also got Narcoball. So there were 2 things that I instantly gravitated toward. Obviously, with Diego Maradona, that's a subject that you could probably write 19 books on. But David decided to tackle the jigsaw puzzle and break down everything from the Cali cartel to the Comoras in Naples to going, head-to-head Rams on a mountainside with the Italian government to Pablo Escobar. And so that's Killing Maradona. That's book number 1. And then he has Narcoball, which talks about the Escobar involvement in Colombian football. And so literally they kind of tie together. So it's almost like it's an intentional, and I'll ask him if it's unintentionally intentional, but it's like one drifting into the other. And the 2 Escobars for me is one of my favorite ESPN 30 for 30s. And it was an exercise in reminding us that storytelling has universal traits. And a good story is not pinned down if your language is not the primary language that is attached to a piece of work. Because the entire documentary, the entire 30 for 30 for the 2 Escobars was in Spanish and had subtitles, and it was gripping. So to be able to have David discuss that as well, like I said, it was 2 natural points for me to sit there and go, ooh, let's talk about that. Ooh, let's talk about that. And so getting him to come in here and break down everything, no brainer on the highest order. And David has Killing Maradona and Narcoball. We'll discuss that with him coming up here in a little under 10 minutes. He'll be after opening kickoff and all the things as we get you ready. So it'll be David getting you ready for the weekend with the news, Dylan, Major League Soccer, and then you're off and running. So that is the beginning of your Wall Pass Wednesday here on SDH. So very, very cool stuff. And David is not local. I'm going to tell you that right now. He is not a local guest. So David, I believe, is 5 hours ahead. So for him, it's like early afternoon. He's had lunch. He's ready to go. He's all gassed up, and we'll break everything down. It'll be like 2:15 in the afternoon when we get to catch up with him today. So very, very cool that we're able to catch up with him and discuss his 2 books. And I'll get into, as a fellow author, I wanted to get into the art of the jigsaw puzzle too, and how difficult it is to assemble books like this when your subject matter is, 3 decades old at the least. So that's all part of it too. So David Arrowsmith dropping by in about 5 minutes, and we'll break down everything there. So the rundown is David, kickoff, David, then it'll be getting you ready for the news of the day, Dylan, MLS, and then you're off and running, because tonight it is Atlanta United and it is Charlotte FC. If you missed the interview that we had with Will Pelagi yesterday, the radio play-by-play voice for Charlotte FC, that is up and running on the network. Yesterday we had a super show, and I broke the sound barrier yesterday. 3 hours and 17 minutes, but it was because of all the guests we had, and we're still trying to get caught up from everything that was happening in the cup that the world was chasing. And so if you missed any of yesterday, it's up. I had to cut the show in half to file it to podcast platforms. Trying to cut clips, I had to actually cut the segments first and then put them back in the machine, because our program doesn't take anything 3 hours over. So we caught up on Tuskegee women's soccer, their first year of coming online, and Coach Emmanuel Stevens. The UBPI program with underserved businesses, and getting to find ways to do one of three things: either come online as a business, find a financial path as a business, or you've got your idea and then trying to figure out, okay, is this a right idea? Is this the right path? All that stuff from our friends at Notre Dame and at Morehouse, breaking that down with the UBPI, and I'm trying to work backward. It was KCD, it was Casey White talking about her true matchups in Major League Soccer. Will actually came in at 8:30, which is a half hour, 35 minutes before we normally come on. Braden Dunham was there on the show before they headed down to Mexico to get ready for the U20 championships in CONCACAF. And then we got to break down what it was like here in a host city when it came to the hospitality market and saturation and lessons and economics and all that kind of stuff from our friends at Kennesaw State. So the show got cut in half. So if you're looking for the first half with Will, Kennesaw State, and the economics of the World Cup, and Braden Dunham, that's in part one. Part two is KCD, the UBPI, and Tuskegee. That's in part number two. And then we have individual sections that have been chopped up and all of that. So that, I guess, is technically opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Black Pitch Coffee and blackpitchcoffee.com. With Black Pitch Coffee and blackpitchcoffee.com, we start your day with the most important stories in the game, the right way to start your morning. Black Pitch Coffee, part of the SDH community, showing up at events all over Atlanta. Try their home blend made with beans from Brazil and Guatemala. Heavy body, notes of walnut and semi-sweet chocolate, and a rich world-class finish. Opening kickoff, powered by Black Pitch Coffee and blackpitchcoffee.com. Okay, so now it's time to go author to author, and I get to find out what's going on, because like I said, when I saw David's books, I was like, ooh, I got to talk to David. And so magically, there's David.
Hello, good morning, John. Good morning, Atlanta, Georgia.
Morning. Thank you for dropping by. And there's like 98 questions that I have. So I'm going to try and fine tune it and refine it. And then if my golden retriever brain goes off in other directions, we may just hit them all. Let me go to the absolute genesis of the ideas. What stirred you to write the books on Diego Maradona and the Escobars in Colombia? What brought it in your brain like, ooh, I want to do that?
So really, it all starts with my heritage and my childhood. I'm half Colombian, although your listeners might not tell from my English accent. I was born and raised in London, but had a very patriotic Colombian mother.
You sound like Jacksonville, Florida, David. That's what
my mother was born in Medellin and raised in Bogota. But I was born and raised in London, and I grew up increasingly, kind of exploring that mixed heritage really that I had as I became a boy and a young man. My mum used to take me back to Colombia to visit and see family. I was born in the late 70s, so I started visiting in the very early 80s. Up until the point, really, that it got too dangerous there. My mother decided it's not maybe a good idea to take an 8, 9, 10-year-old boy to Bogota and Medellin in the late 80s. In 1988, she took me to my first football match, and it was at Old Wembley in London, and it was England versus Colombia. And it was the first time Colombia had ever played in England and at Wembley, the home of football. And it was a 1-1 draw. And I went with my mum. She bought tickets for me and a bunch of my friends. We were about 7, 8 years old. And we sat up in the gods with all the Colombia fans because she'd bought her tickets as a Colombian. And so we were there, and we saw Andres Escobar score his only ever goal for Colombia. in a 1-1 draw. Carlos Valderrama was playing in midfield for Colombia. The coach was Pacho Matarrana. So I grew up, that was my first football match. I then supported Colombia and England in the World Cup in Italy in 1990, Colombia at USA in 94. And really, I had this kind of traumatic moment for a teenage boy exploring his half Colombian bloodline when Colombia sort of failed so horrifically on the pitch at USA 94. But then even more traumatically when Andres Escobar was murdered back in Medellin just days after they exited the tournament. And I think that just sat with me for many years without me really ever addressing it. And then fast forward to just a few years ago, I've been working in television for nearly 20 years at that point, developing documentary films. And I wanted to develop and pitch and hopefully get commissioned a documentary series on Colombian football and the influence of the cartels. There's a very famous feature doc called The Two Escobars, 30 for 30, which is brilliant, but it's been going for a few, it's a few years old now, that one. And I thought there was a lot more to say about the story. And in the end, my idea for a documentary instead became an idea that a literary agent liked, and then publishers were interested in. So I quit 20 years of television to really explore the story of that trauma that I experienced as a teenage boy. You're sort of starting to really embrace my Colombian heritage, and then seeing all of that, crossing the Atlantic and crossing the world, really, the stories of the darkness of Colombia and all of that. Yeah. So that was how it all started with the first book with Narcoball, and that then led on to my next book, Killing Maradona, which is all about El Diego.
Before you popped in, yes, we believe in hydration. We have hydration breaks here on the show, so that is not a problem at all.
I don't think that's the first quarter somehow of the show, but let's see. I do rabbit on a bit, John. Apologies if you're listening.
No, dude, we got space and time. We got space and time, and we might go down rabbit holes. You might be in trouble this morning. I had mentioned before you came on the Two Escobars and how it was a gorgeous piece of documentary filmmaking. And I reminded folks that even if your primary language is not attached to a documentary or a piece of work, it still can be riveting. And it was riveting television, what they had pieced together about everything that had gone on and how Colombia was basically attached to Pablo Escobar, and how he was, all of a gentlemen of a certain business were funding professional clubs and the influence and all this kind of stuff. And then if you felt like if you didn't go and see him when he was imprisoned, then you might be in trouble if you didn't show up. And there's the soundbite, I think, from Rene Higuita, where he's discussing, it's like, man, we went there because he was a patron. And I'm still thinking there's that underbelly of, well, if we didn't go, we might not come back. Those kinds of things. When it came to the art of discovery, let me ask this. When it came to the art of discovery and then I guess self-discovery, what did you find out? How difficult was the art of discovery when you were putting Narcoball together?
In terms of kind of the story and research and how to find an angle on the story? Yeah, I mean, I think what I found that I found interesting actually is that lots of people have had their version of the story. Lots of people have told their version of this story, but not actually of this story. A lot of people have told their version of the Pablo Escobar story and their part in it. And what I found was that despite there being plenty of books on Pablo, documentaries on Pablo, drama series and all kinds of materials there, podcasts and newspaper articles, magazine pieces, no one had really put it through that lens of football, soccer, as your audience might refer to it. Nobody had really done an in-depth look at the era of what in Colombia was called el narco football, and what I created the title of Narcoball from. And I went to work and I went, into my research, and I was reading books by his brother and his wife and watching documentaries and podcasts and reading every article I could find online in Spanish, in English, in French, whatever I could find. And in so many of those sources, there were these small little references to football, to his relationship with football, and to what I pieced together to be really his genuine love of the game. But nobody really, very few people seem to be coming out and actively saying that he genuinely had this love for the game. And there seemed to be nothing really fully telling the story of how from cradle to grave, really, he was quite obsessed with football and the influence that he had, not just on the national team, but on the league, on the club sides, on the evolution of soccer in Colombia, of a whole generation in terms of talent identification and retention. So it felt like a story that was sort of there, but nobody had told it really in that way. And so I was able to find all these amazing little stories and anecdotes and little kind of breadcrumbs, littered throughout the various bodies of work on Pablo. But put it all together to tell the story, not just of Pablo, but of Colombia, of Colombian football, and how he intersected with both kind of the political and economic life of the country, but also the footballing life of the country.
There's one story that that popped into my head as you were breaking that down. I think that there was, and it goes back to the documentary, where his number one, I think his number one assassin was interviewed a great deal in the documentary, and he was referencing a point where his love of the game was to a point to where they were in the forests and they were being chased by the national police, and he's got a radio with him while they're being pursued, and he's listening to, I think he's listening to the national team if I'm not mistaken, but he's listening to a game while they're being pursued by the national police. And with everything going on, he still had that focus of the love of the game. And it's like, no, man, I want to listen to the game while, yes, you're being pursued by the national police. It was an interesting dichotomy.
Yes, absolutely. It's actually pretty much the opening scene in my book Narcoball is exactly that. He's on the run with Popeye. He shouts out to Popeye, who thinks they've been discovered and are about to be gunned down in a blaze of glory and hail of bullets. And actually, Pablo's shouting out because Colombia have just scored. I think it was the goal actually that took them to Italia 90. I think that's what I discovered in my research was it was probably the game where Colombia were playing a qualifier to get through to the World Cup. So yeah, he had this genuine love of football, and it was something that enabled me to find some kind of way to understand him and to empathize with him, which is, I think, crucial when you're trying to write a book like that. You need to get under the skin of the main character, be he good or evil. You need to understand what makes him tick, and you need to find any element of commonality I think you can find in order to fully understand them. So that was for me, that was what I drew on was his love of football. He listened to the national team. He supported the Medellin teams. He, the last time that his wife ever saw him happy, and perhaps the last time he ever was happy before he was shot and killed, was watching Argentina 0, Colombia 5 on his television set. He was hiding in a safe house, pretty much his last remaining active safe house called the Casa Azul, the Blue House. And he was watching that game, and he was happy for days after that game. It was the match where Colombia humbled Argentina in Buenos Aires. Nobody expected it. Argentina had to win to qualify automatically for USA 94. So it was a must-win game for Argentina at home, where they had been almost unbeatable for many years. And for Colombia to beat them 5-0, it really kind of shook the footballing world. And that was really what led Pelé to suggesting they were kind of dark horses for the whole tournament. And that was, that he was ecstatic. And I don't think you can fake that kind of happiness. And you're not going to be happy for days about something like that unless you deeply care about it in some way. So yes, from almost the moment he was born to almost the moment of his death, football was there, and it was something that he cared about and that motivated him. He grew up, kicking a plastic bag filled with rags around the streets because he couldn't afford a football half the time, and him and his brother would just kick, this plastic bag filled with scraps of clothing in lieu of a soccer ball. So yeah, it was always there, and it was something that he did love, and it did motivate him.
How difficult was it to get people to talk? Because I would imagine, your first contact with folks, and especially these days when it's, email or whatever. Hey, I'm doing a book on I'm doing a book on Pablo Escobar. And people sit there and go, wait, what? I don't know. I don't know if I can talk about this one. And then you sit there and you follow up. No, it's about the football aspect of it. It's not about the business aspect of it. But how open and honest were folks when they understood where you were coming from?
In all honesty, it was a huge challenge. It wasn't something I necessarily expected when I started out, and I obviously went straight out and contacted as many people, family, colleagues of Pablo's, people related. I wrote to the remaining Rodriguez Orejuela brother in high security prison in the US. I wrote to him hard copy in Spanish and translated into English, and posted that, with his prisoner number to the jail in the US where he was being held. And, the odd person got back to me, but pretty much everybody got back to me to say thanks, but no thanks. And I think there are various reasons for that, all of which I understand. I think for some of them, there may have been some latent fear still there. But I suspect actually more than that, it was a couple of different things. It was for the sort of regular Colombian, I think there's definitely a sense of we've moved on from Pablo. We don't really want to tell this story again. And I think the book really is for everybody else. It's not really for Colombians who lived through all of this. It's for Americans, Brits, Spaniards, French and German readers, Polish readers, who maybe know a bit about Pablo and a bit about Colombian football, but didn't live through it and aren't still dealing with some of the fallout and the stigma associated with it. So I think some of the Colombians I contacted just didn't really want to go back into the past. I think a lot of them, the big characters and the big names around his story, as I kind of already alluded to, they've sort of already had their say in one way, shape or form. A lot of them have, written their own books or had books published with them or about them. A lot of them have appeared in documentaries, but none of them have told this exact story. And so when they didn't want to share specific details with me, what that gave me really was the freedom to take what I found of their stories and use it to tell the narrative and the story that I was interested in, to not be beholden to a particular contributor, but to be able to pull everything together and give, from my perspective, the kind of biggest, broadest, fairest assessment of it all.
Was there one aha moment for you more than anything else? Was there something along the lines of, man, I didn't even know this is a part of your knowledge base? Obviously going in had one thing. Was there an aha or a holy crap, putting this thing together? Did you ever have one of those moments piecing this together?
I think there were several stories that I either didn't know about or didn't really know much about that I found fascinating and were kind of considerable parts of the book. I think one was most things relating to the domestic game in Colombia. I was familiar with the national team. I'd been able to follow their fortunes as best I could from the UK, but I didn't really follow Colombian club football and domestic football. I didn't have an affiliation with a club side. Nobody in my family kind of passed on to me a love of a particular club side. I grew up following English football and, what became the Premier League. And supporting England, but also supporting Colombia as a national side. So the story, particularly of Atlético Nacional, of their success, and particularly of the Copa Libertadores triumph in 1989 and Pablo's influence on that in terms of plata o plomo and the bribery and the threatening and the coercion. And that then led to this Intercontinental Cup final match against AC Milan in Japan, in Tokyo, which I didn't know that much about. And I was able to watch. The whole match is available online and you can just watch it. And it's a great game. And Atlético Nacional comes so close to beating an all-time great AC Milan side. So I found those things really interesting. And actually, the one other story that I found that had been reported briefly by a journalist or two, I think in UK newspapers, but had seemingly kind of flown under the radar. And it was a story that I found fascinating. Was the smuggling of Diego Maradona into La Catedral to play football with Pablo. I knew about La Catedral. I knew that it was this sort of gilded cage that he had effectively had designed and built, purpose built for his own purposes, so that he could hand himself in and take a light sentence, and then effectively continue running operations from behind bars in this effectively luxury prison, where he used all his smuggler's tricks to kit it out with a disco, a casino, a gym, a movie room, everything you can imagine. It was like a Vegas hotel in there by the time he'd finished with it, I think. But what I hadn't known until I started researching in more detail was how many people he had smuggled in there, along with kind of drugs and I think guns and girls and all kinds of other things. But, you know, the footballers from René Higuita who visited him, to getting, you know, players from the other club sides that he was involved in there. But in particular, this story that he sent somebody to negotiate with Maradona when Maradona was under not quite house arrest in Buenos Aires. He had been suspended from football for failing a drugs test, for testing positive for cocaine while he was at Napoli. He was handed a 15-month ban. At almost the same time, he was prosecuted for possession of cocaine in Italy. He returned to Buenos Aires because he couldn't play football. He was then prosecuted for possession of cocaine in Buenos Aires. And he was stuck in this apartment. If he went anywhere, you know, he got a bit mobbed. He was supposed to be having court-mandated therapy, but he didn't really like it. And then he gets this offer, you know, how would you like a big bag of cash to play football with someone important in Colombia? And so he took the offer. He went to Medellin. He was taken to La Catedral. He met this guy. He claims he didn't really know who he was, but this guy was, you know, this kind of stocky guy, a few years older than him, claimed to be a big fan of Diego. And lo and behold, it was El Patron, Pablo Escobar. And they play this game in the prison football pitch that, of course, Pablo has made sure was installed, because he had a football pitch everywhere he did his business and everywhere he went. And then Diego gets the offer to stay on and party, and a bevy of beautiful ladies appears miraculously out of nowhere. He has the time of his life. He accepts the offer of a bed to rest his weary head at the end of the night. And then the next morning, he leaves Colombia with a big bag of cash for his troubles. And that was a fantastic story. People seem to really love that. And that pretty much directly led to the development of my next book, Killing Maradona. It was the response to that story that led me to think, for my next book, why don't we do something on Diego?
It's like you're reading my notes, man. It's like all the transitional elements. It's like you worked in TV before. It's like you know how to be careful.
Who'd have thunk it, John? Who'd have thunk it?
Careful. I don't want to spit take to destroy your computer or your camera now. So let me know if I need to stop a punchline. There's been a lot of stuff posted wherever about Diego. And you take that one story from Narcoball leads to Killing Maradona. Was there any blending? Were you having to do two projects at the same time? Or was it like, okay, I hit my stopping point here. This one's put to bed. Narcoball's put to bed. I'm going to Killing Maradona. Was there any crossover in these two?
No, there was a bit of a gap. You know, the way publishing tends to work is it's not easy to get another book away while they're still waiting for your first book to actually go out and see the sales figures and all of that. So I had a bit of breathing room when Narcoball was first published. And then when it came out, then within a few months, I started pitching new ideas to my publisher. And I pitched several different ideas. But the one that everybody got behind was the Maradona story. So it was probably nearly a year after I finished writing Narcoball that I started in earnest writing Killing Maradona. So there was a bit of clear water there, which is quite nice. As a writer, you need a little bit of time, I think, to let things settle and recharge and go again.
Well, you say that, and for me, it's like you put a project to bed as a book, and then you start thinking about the next one, and then because I'm completely and totally paranoid when I'm piecing the jigsaw puzzle together, I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to mention this about the previous book. Hey, do I need to go back, and do I need to fix this one and still work on this one? So for me, it's hard sometimes to let the past project go, but at least for you, the end of the first book leads you in to help you fill in the corners of that 500-piece jigsaw puzzle of the Eiffel Tower that you're piecing together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know exactly what you mean. And, I've been speaking to people about the timelines for writing books recently. And, the fact that there's always more research that you can do. There's always more work that you can do. But at least if you've got a deadline and you've got a timeline, then there comes a point where you just have to draw a line under it and say, I have to get writing now. I'm not going to hit my deadline. I've got to write 80,000 words, 100,000 words, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm not too bad at leaving it behind. I think, once it's done, it's done. There's always things you think, I could have told more of that story. I could have done more research there. I could have changed this. There's always even the odd mistake creeps in, whether it's a typo or whatever it might be. And you just have to... You have to try and have thick skin and live with it. It's really hard. It's painful. But, you look at the body of the work and you go, overall, am I proud of it? Does it do what I want it to do? Do people enjoy it? I wanted to write books that I thought people would find really entertaining. Coming from that TV background, I always, I grew up through my career understanding, I hope, that idea that what you want is for people to learn by stealth. You want people to get smarter without realizing necessarily that they're getting smarter. They enjoy something, and then at the end of it, they realize, oh, I've actually learned something, and I can go and tell my friend at the bar or whatever this great story that I learned from watching this documentary or from reading this book. And so I wanted the entry point for these books to be not really about, journalism and research and facts and, although it has all of that, I hope, but really to be about a big, exciting, broad topic and subject with a real kind of narrative to it, a real human emotional core to it that just means it should feel like reading for fun and reading a bit of a thriller or a bit of an entertaining, romp.
Yeah, my mom was an English major, so my grammar has to be like pluperfect. It cannot be just like perfect. It's got to be like pluperfect. And so, yeah, when you mentioned grammar, that was like, yeah, and spell checks and all that kind of stuff. It definitely got into me there. When you were piecing this one together, I mean, there's a lot of material to go from all of the different stops on the CV. What ended up on the cutting room floor? What could end up as almost like the pickup point if you wanted to do a volume 2? Because I know that you hit a couple of different points in a couple of different countries, but what didn't fit in the jigsaw puzzle that you wish did when it came to Killing Maradona?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I definitely went with the more is more approach with Maradona. I mean, there is so much, but so much of it is important. And it's probably no surprise that the book is, I think, about 50% longer than Narcoball. It's like 120,000 words, which is, that's a pretty hefty tome for a nonfiction book. But it was hard. I tell his story from cradle to grave and even just beyond the grave, really. And it's hard to know what to leave out. In the end, I think ultimately what I wanted to focus on was him as a human being and him, the darkness inside him, but more specifically, the dark forces swirling around him that coerced and controlled him. With or without his understanding and with or without his agreement. And so actually, by focusing on those, I made a conscious decision that although there's loads of football in there and there's loads of information about his footballing career and those amazing moments that are so pivotal, both in his playing career, but also, his success on the pitch had such an impact on his contracts and his career moves and the people who were interested in him. You can't leave the football out. But I would say I probably dialed down some of the football detail. Some of the stories of the whole season, might be condensed into a few key games and then the overall picture of the season. Because actually what I'm interested in is often what's going on around those games and off the pitch. And so, rather than dig into the minutiae of the detail of every single game that he played, it's about the key games and then everything else in his life.
82 minutes in a midweek game going up against 87. That would, you want to tell the story, and then you've got to figure out the greatest hits to move it past the athletic part and into the personal part. I'm going to ask this, and I'm going to phrase it this way, and you can take it however you wish. How misunderstood is Diego Maradona as an individual, not as a footballer, but the off the field? How much do we not know? How much do we not understand? How much did you learn in this process? So that's why I say, how misunderstood is he? We know the genius that was there on the field. And to this day, knowing the context of how physical the game was and everything, all of his troubles off the field that contributed to on the field, how misunderstood or unknown is the off the field Diego Maradona?
I think he relatively misunderstood and relatively unknown. And I think that's what I wanted the book to do, really, was to shine a light on all of that other stuff that wasn't the football, that actually goes to show that, there's a strong argument for saying he was the greatest ever because of all this other stuff that he had to overcome and had going on in his life that modern footballers are somewhat protected from. I think, I started the project, really with a very Anglo-centric view of Diego Maradona as a player who had defeated England, cheated to beat England in the eyes of many people. The hand of God, alongside the goal of the century in the quarterfinal at the Azteca in Mexico, 86. So I was kind of coming at it as almost as a British, author more than, say, a Colombian author, somebody who grew up here, who watched that game, here in the UK, and where, and was here, when the news was reporting that, when the newspapers were reporting that, you very much get that Anglo-centric post-Falklands, view. And as a child, Argentina and Germany were probably the big footballing rivals. And so when I started the project, he was kind of this almost pantomime villain, really. He was the hero of Argentina, but he was definitely a bit of a villain for most people in the UK, I think. And actually, the process of researching and writing the book, really brought me around to having a huge sympathy for him and really to appreciate having that deeper understanding of everything he battled with, battled against, fought for and fought against. He was not a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination. He had huge flaws, and a very complicated personality in many ways. But I think until you see the full context of everything that he had thrown at him from childhood, to his death, it's very easy to just look at what he did on the pitch and then perhaps look at some of his misbehavior off it and around it and just sort of call him a tortured soul and a kind of flawed genius. But when you actually look at the level of power and coercion and control and manipulation that was swirling around him from huge, powerful entities and bodies that were potentially much, much bigger and more powerful than him. And like I say, I think sometimes he went into that willingly or knowingly. Sometimes he kind of deliberately turned a blind eye. And I think other times he was a bit naive to some of that and perhaps a bit misdirected in thinking he knew, the true enemy or really what was going on. So I think probably I felt as someone who knew a bit about football and a bit about Maradona, that there was so much more once I got into it. And I hope that that's what readers will find when they read the book. They'll get a completely new perspective on exactly what was going on around him.
When you wander into your favorite bookstore or bookstores? Because I imagine, when we all do our shopping, we always kind of drift into our favorite joints and sit there. It's like, oh, Barnes and Noble, and you go wandering in. Do you go over to your section to see how many copies of the book are there and how many there aren't? Do you
Of course.
You go in and you monitor and you sit there and you wonder if anybody's in the aisle, and they sit there, and you go in and somebody's like open your book and you're sitting there and you're going, hey, you know what? I know the author, and he's a pretty good dude. You should get this. Do you go in there and do you look at the stacks and sit there and go, man, how many books have you written now, by the way?
So these are the two big nonfiction books that I've written since I quit my career and kind of became a full-time author. It's these two. I've written a bit of fiction, more for myself than anything else in the past. So I've got a couple of fiction books under my belt. But really, the driver was the chance to leave my career and write these nonfiction books professionally as a full-time career. And absolutely, you do go and have a look. I think you wouldn't be human if you weren't curious. And where I live, I can just about walk to the nearest bookshop that stocks my book, and I can pop in and see if the copies are still there. And if they're not, that means someone's bought them. And if they are, and I haven't yet signed a copy, I'll always give it a little scribble, and then they get the little signed by the author sticker, and that hopefully encourages local readers to maybe take a punt on the book. So yeah, it's I think it's you work very hard on these things. You kind of pour your heart and soul into them, and you just want to know that anybody out there is reading and enjoying them, and any positive feedback you get is absolutely incredible and so invaluable. I still say to people, every single book that I know is sold, every time someone sends me a photo with my book saying I'm reading it on holiday, every comment, I loved your book, every review, every rating, everybody adding it to their wish list or sticking it on, one of the platforms, Goodreads or Amazon or wherever it is. It all, especially when, I'm only a few years into my professional career as a writer, and it all really motivates you and really helps you keep going and see that it's worth it, because it's one thing to write the book, but it's a complete other thing to talk to people and hear from people who have enjoyed it and have got something from it.
Yeah, you gave me an idea, because now next time I go into a bookstore, I am going to go into the section where my books are, and I'm just going to go ahead and just randomly sign them and put them back into the shelving. I'd never thought about that. I think that's a hell of an idea. I think
it really helps. Like I say, one of the big book chains here, Waterstones, have stocked my books, and I did a local event at one of their branches, and it really seems to make a difference, especially when you've got a good local reading market. They put a sticker on it that says it's signed by the author, and I think that just people feel that that's kind of collectible, and that kind of gives it some value. And I think also it encourages them to think that maybe I am local, and therefore they're kind of supporting a local independent person. So yeah, it's really nice. And yeah, any positive feedback, you're obviously going to occasionally get some negative feedback, and you have to learn to just kind of roll with that. Yeah. But when you get any positive feedback, it's incredibly motivating. It feels so great. And yeah, I think it's kind of a brave thing to put your work out there into the world, right, John? You slave away over these things, and then you kind of throw it out there to the wolves for them to kind of pick it over. And that you might get criticism, you might fall flat on your face. And you've got to kind of be a big brave boy and hope that it flies rather than falls. So yeah, it's scary, but it's also fantastic when it goes well.
Yep. So what's next, huh? Now that you get these two, what's the next one? Come on now.
Yeah. I'll be talking to my publisher soon, I think, about some other projects, and keep things ticking over. But to be honest, it's been an incredibly busy summer with the World Cup. So the book came out. I think actually the physical copy of Killing Maradona only came out very recently in the US. Actually, I think there was a small delay, possibly. I don't know if it was to do with supply lines and the global shipping situation and everything else. But the ebook and the audiobook came out in May, but I think the physical book only came out very recently in the US. In the UK, they all came out at the same time, just before the World Cup, really. And obviously the World Cup was incredibly busy for me, doing various events and radio and other things. So I'm about to take a little break, I think, with my family, recharge for a bit, and then go again. But watch this space.
Yep, July 14th apparently was when it was published, according to our friends at the Amazons. One author to another. Congratulations on both of these.
Thank you, John.
I appreciate you sending the PDFs. Full disclosure, like I said, I've known the Escobar story. Another one of our folks here is a big Maradona guy. He is like the Maradona guy here in the U.S. probably, and loves Argentina. And Maradona was his first entry into the sport, and so it was a no-brainer on a couple of different levels. Do not be a stranger. I know that you got a boogie. You got like 10 minutes to clean up things and get out the door and do whatever you need to do there on the day. I can't thank you enough for doing this. 2 fantastic books, 2 great topics. David, do not be a stranger. Knock on a door at any time, especially if you ever want to talk about Los Cafeteros when it comes to CONMEBOL, my friend.
Definitely. I'd love that. Yeah, you can't stop me talking about Colombian football. So anytime. Thank you so much, John. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Be good. We'll see you soon. There goes David Arrowsmith. And we kept him from, we meant him to be hydrated properly. It's just, I've got to be careful when I see someone, hydrating and then you drop a punchline in there. You don't want to sit there and have him go, all over the camera and the computer and everything. But no, very good stuff. David Arrowsmith. That's very, very cool that we were able to grab him and discuss everything. So the 2 books, Narcoball and Killing Maradona. You can get them on the Amazons, and that's probably what I'm going to do to add to my cart and everything else that is there. And don't tell Jason, but I'm probably going to get that for him for Festivus. Like I said, I sent him the PDF of the book just so he could read it and see what was going on with it. But yeah, don't be surprised if it ends up as something that ends up in his Festivus stocking. So there you go. Morning, David. So David is trying to make sure you're going to wear somebody out. Just don't wear yourself out. It is match day. Need to wear out a small child, so she's sleeping before kick. And it's probably going to be a later kick, which will buy you some time because it's big FOX, so that means it's probably 8:25 as opposed to 8:10 because they've got that double header. So that's part of the day. Let's get into the news before Dylan joins us at 10 o'clock and goes through everything in Major League Soccer, or at least this will be our first foray into the news. And that will get everything rolling when it comes to everything going on. And so probably the biggest thing to get into is stuff that happened overnight. And it has to do with Tonda Eckert. And there has been a decision by the FA on his more recent activities and how they will be going forward. Here's the latest from our friends from Sky, if I can find it and hit the button correctly. So here we go.
Now to some big breaking news regarding Southampton's Spygate scandal. The club have confirmed that head coach Tonda Eckert has been charged by the FA. He is charged with 3 breaches of FA Rule E3.1 in relation to misconduct between December 2025 and May 2026. The FA say it's alleged that the head coach acted in an improper manner and or brought the game into disrepute by directing and or authorising the observation of training sessions of Oxford United FC, Ipswich Town FC and Middlesbrough FC ahead of fixtures between these clubs and Southampton FC in December 2025, April 2026 and May 2026 respectively. Eckert has until Tuesday to provide his responses. Now, some context here. Southampton were expelled from the Championship playoff final in May by the EFL after they admitted to spying on 3 clubs during the season after they were caught observing a Middlesbrough training session at the first leg of their playoff semi-final. The EFL charged Saints after it was later found that also observed sessions involving Oxford, Ipswich Southampton will also start the upcoming season on -4 points as part of the EFL's punishment. And Southampton have released this statement. Southampton Football Club and the first-team head coach Tonda Ecker acknowledged today's charge from the FA relating to the breach of Rule E3.1. Tonda and the club will continue to cooperate fully and openly with the FA. Our focus remains on preparations for the 2026-27 Championship season. The club remains fully supportive of Tonda and his staff as we work towards our ambition of returning to the Premier League. We are unable to comment further while the process remains ongoing, but we will provide an update to supporters as soon as we are in a position to do so.
And so that's the latest out of Southampton. And Tonda Eckert has accepted full responsibility, in quotation marks, after he initially didn't. So sending club staff to observe training sessions on 3 opponents. And the thing is that they weren't even all that successful. I think they only won one of those 3. I think it was a win, a draw, and a loss. That they weren't even all that successful in it. So accepting full responsibility, sending club staff. They have until the 28th. So basically it's 6 days to come up with an answer. So the serious violation is on the board. Eckert apologized to fans. Dragan Solak, the Southampton owner, has said he wants Eckert to lead the club into the Premier League, wants to close the chapter, look ahead together as one, quoting, including Tonda and his staff. Saints, once again, we mentioned the 4-point deduction. In 2019, you'll remember, and this was part of the defense for Southampton, was the Marcelo Bielsa spying, and that was when he was manager at Leeds. Formal warning to Leeds and to the club analysts for spying, but the governing body said they would take appropriate action should further evidence of this nature come to light. And so that was the defense that was there by Southampton at the time. Well, you only gave Leeds a warning, and then you had the hour and 40-minute PowerPoint presentation by Bielsa. You didn't have that in this case with Tonda Eckert. So Tonda Eckert, once again, could be hit with a 1-year ban if, with the three counts of misconduct. And so you could a range of punishments, but a 1-year ban could be a part of that. So keep an eye on that with Tonda Eckert. Italy. Financial exceptions have been made for Pep Guardiola to become the next Italy head coach. From PA Media, that's how they framed it. Financial exceptions, in quotation marks, are in place to allow him to become the next head coach, according to the FIGC's president, Giovanni Malago, and free to take up another job since his time at Manchester City has ended. And he's been linked with the vacancy for some time. Remember, Gattuso resigned from the post back in April after failing to qualify. So Malago is quoted as saying by Gazzetta, exceptions have been made, exceptions that, for example, may concern the name that is so overbearing in these hours, Pep Guardiola, exceptions for obvious reasons that I'm not here to explain, but it is not certain that this thing will go through. Roberto Mancini and Andrea Pirlo are the other reported candidates for the vacancy. Asked if Guardiola, Mancini, and Pirlo were the only names on the short list, Malago added, absolutely not. Quote, we think about a certain profile, and certainly these names fall into that category. So apparently the FIGC is ready to make any kind of financial exception humanly possible to try and see if they can get Pep Guardiola in. Matt Hughes and Will Unwin at The Guardian. It has been announced that, or put out publicly, that Amazon's founder Jeff Bezos has held talks about joining the consortium seeking to buy around 30% of Liverpool from FSG. The group, led by former QPR co-owner Amrit Bhatia, has made a provisional offer of £1.35 billion to buy a stake in the club from Fenway Sports Group, talking to other potential investors over supplying funding. Bezos' personal fortune, according to Forbes, is around $257 billion, fourth richest person in the world. He recently explored bids for the Seahawks and the Commanders without completing a deal. Sources with knowledge of the talks have indicated any deal with Bhatia's consortium would see Bezos receive equity in Liverpool. And he relinquished day-to-day control of Amazon when he stepped down as chief exec 5 years ago. And Amazon had live UK rights for 20 Premier League games each season for 6 years until the end of last year, broadcasts of the Champions League in European countries as well as the NFL. The Bhatia bid for Liverpool, understood to value the club at around £4.5 billion, higher than the valuation of Manchester United when Sir Jim Ratcliffe bought a quarter of the club 2 years ago. Bhatia is believed to have secured financial backing from his father-in-law, Indian steel magnate Lakshmi Mittal, whose family wealth is estimated around 23 billion pounds. Bhatia was a director and a co-owner of QPR until yesterday, when he transferred his shares to fellow owner Ruben Nanalingam to pave the way for the consortium's prospective investment in Liverpool. FSG spokesperson confirmed the talks. FSG previously sold 3% of the club to the U.S. private equity firm Dynasty Equity in 2023. A spokesperson for Bhatia declined comment. And I think I'm still listing myself as from Sky Sports News, which is no longer the case, considering that soundbite is aired already. So you've got Bezos looking to buy into the consortium for Liverpool, and you have Pep Guardiola possibly being a part of the Italy future going forward. All right, so it is the beginning of hour number 2, and it is that time where we catch up with our friend Dylan Butler. We bring in Dylan Butler because it is time for the hydration break. It's hour number 2. We got to get things moving here. So hydration. Oh, he's a dad today. Okay.
Every day.
Mm-hmm. Brought to us by our friends at local Vine Beer, Wine, and Liquor stores, 2 locations in and around the Atlanta area, Johns Creek and Cumberland, right there at the corner of Cumberland Parkway and Cobb Parkway. Thanks for being great partners and friends with us here at SDH all year long here in 2026. So when are you on the desk?
When am I not on the desk?
That's absolutely true. Yes, absolutely true.
Actually currently, but also tonight and Saturday.
Okay, so you've got all 47 games today and then
yes,
all 47 on Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. When you are on the desk, and technically, as you say, you're on the desk now until the end of time. For those that may not quite understand the labor intensity of what you're trying to do on a match day, what do you do over at MLSsoccer.com so folks can stay as up to date as humanly possible? What is your work?
What is it would you say that you do here?
But because I mean, it's is it updating?
No, I was just quoting Office Space there.
What do you do
here? So
on
a match night, there are I'm one of the editors, and there's a few editors, and we generally share. So we have editors and we have writers, and the editors kind of dictate the storylines, right? Like obviously with feedback from the writers as well, but we're looking for the most pertinent league-wide sort of news that would resonate to share, and that could be an incredible goal. It could be a big moment in a matchup. Could be a rivalry game. Obviously, this league has multiple different angles. It could be a debut, like we might see tonight,
right?
So, or a couple of debuts tonight. So that's part of it, and then there's like kind of inside the weeds, kind of some ideal with some of the video elements. So just making sure things are tagged correctly and making sure they're titled correctly, and then kind of putting like a little witty headline on a golazo or a moment like that, if you will.
And I mean, and it is really no rest, head on a swivel until, and just because a match ends at 11, 11, it starts at say 10:30 East. You're not done at 1 a.m. because if you're the major domo, then you've got to make sure everything's put to bed, both figuratively and literally, and everything is still correct. And so, I mean, you're talking what, late nights out in the West? You're probably talking what, 2 a.m. wrap up?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, likely, if we have a quote-based story on, say, Griezmann tonight, that might be something that we wait for, or, we'll get another type of story up before that, maybe add the quotes in the morning. But yeah, I would say usually it's like I think it's a pretty safe bet, like a 7:30 to 2 a.m. shift.
Because do you get a nap in? How do you navigate the
I don't know. Well, hopefully we'll see.
I was going to say, I mean, because you're juggling dad duties and school and getting folks off to either camp or what have you, and putting up with questions from me and at early in the mornings, and then dropping Gary Cole references, right there in the middle of a segment. But because that's a long, and this is, pardon my French, that's a long ass day, man.
Yes, it is. That's why these double match weeks are wonderful.
Oh yeah, I can, and the genuine sense of excitement that's attached to it.
But I do. This is where like 360 is so valuable to me. Because I don't need to worry about trying to watch multiple matches. We didn't have that last week in the abbreviated MLS return, so I had one match on the TV, one on the phone, one on the computer. So
yes,
360 is a lifesaver for the work that I do.
Yes, and I can relate because I'm right there with you. I literally have 360 on the Big 55, then everything else is over in here. We are looking at a couple of big debuts.
Yeah.
We almost had a big debut, but wildfires took priority, as they should.
Oh, they were horrible. We had the residuals up here.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, until the Russian weather machine took over and cleared everything out for the World Cup final.
Yes.
I mean, it was you had everything there in the Northeast, and then Chicago was supposed to unveil Lewandowski. I mean, you look at Lewandowski in and of itself in Chicago, and you're thinking, okay, so Ugo Kuipers pulls the Ray Bork moment with Phil Esposito all over again, and then he goes from 9 to 99, and then all of a sudden Ugo Kuipers is like, nah, fam, I'm out. I want to head to, I want out the door. And so I was mentioning yesterday, does that open the door for Leon Goretzka maybe for the end of the year? Because that was a rumor that was out there. But either way, you thought Lewandowski had a tag team partner. Now he doesn't. And now the probability that he gets unveiled tonight for Chicago and Greg Berhalter.
Yeah, I didn't think, Greg tried to do his best, shell game a little bit and was like, no, we've been thinking about two strikers. We've been working the system during training. Like, their system is what it is. It's obviously worked for them considering their place in the Eastern Conference. So the two striker system was never going to work. Kuipers wasn't going to be a super sub.
No.
So, you have to sell him. So, I'm not surprised by that, but I am intrigued, as you mentioned, kind of what does that mean now, right? You open up a designated player spot. You've got an owner who's willing to splash the cash. So, I am interested to see what they do with that and kind of where they spend that money.
Orlando, the purple team, they're getting to unveil Griezmann, but that's not the only thing that's been going on. Duncan McGuire gets flipped to Houston, and then you bring in Daryl Dike. And so it's offense that you're hoping for. And I want to see how the puzzle pieces fit with the purple team now that you brought in Griezmann, you brought in Dike, so you got your power forward who's going to post up top, and how Griezmann orients into a team that has been porous defensively at times this season. And it's like you bring in offensive guys to kind of it's like, okay, hey, you know what, we're going to bring in some offensive guys to help things out, but you've given up a lot of goals.
Yeah, you mentioned that other part of it, right? Like they've given up 5 more goals than anybody else in Major League Soccer this year. So yeah, we'll solidify the attack and win games like the third place match, right? Like we'll go 5-4. Which will entertain, no doubt. But yeah, you got to think there's more, coming in this summer transfer window.
Yeah, and you're right. Kansas City, and this is the thing, Kansas City. Everybody knows that all the problems that Kansas City's been having this year until recently, where they might have turned a corner and hope that it's not somebody with a frying pan. They've given up 39 goals this season in 15 matches. And they've given up goals in bunches, especially early when they were like, yeah, we've got to, just be patient here with Rafa Vicky. But 39 goals given up by the last place team in the Western Conference. And Orlando has given up 5 more than that.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. 44 goals, and you're at a -21 in goal difference. You've only won once on the road this year, and you're 13th in the you're 13th in the Eastern Conference. I'm
And you go to a San Jose team tonight, right?
uh-huh,
That's been one of the stories of Major League Soccer this year.
uh-huh. And so you're going to be it's a late night game, and so you're going to have MLS After Dark with the purple team in San Jose, and I mean, I don't where the purple team is concerned. I don't know what to expect other than maybe a lot of goals, honestly, and both in the good and the bad. And I mean, you're a plus 409 dog in that one, but not surprisingly so. But you bring in more offensive talent, and you've given up the most goals in Major League Soccer. I'm like, okay, so you're going to turn this into having everybody look at the over when it comes to juice boxes until further notice.
Yeah, neither of those dudes are going to track back for sure. So
I'm thinking no. Let's see. So Portland has brought in Marty Cifuentes to be their new head coach, and at least out of the blocks for him, they get a home match late night tonight against FCD. So it's a decent ramp for Marty Cifuentes to take things over in Portland, and we know
and coming in off of a high, right? The highest of highs with a Cascadia route at Seattle.
Oh man, I know. And you had Seattle coming into this obviously with injuries, and I honestly thought that last time out that was going to be one of those games, and we've seen them from Brian Schmetzer before, where it's like, I know that I know that we're shorthanded. I know that we've got stuff coming out of Tacoma. I think we're just going to be here so we don't get fined and then try to get out of Dodge, with one, 1-1 goalless draw, something like that, and then apologize to people afterward. But Portland took out. Portland was basically a choose your own switch adventure. It's like, all right, you go out back, you go find what switch you want me to hit you with, and I'm going to do it.
And that was almost all in the second half too. That was a 1-0 game going into halftime.
And that was, and so Portland right now, because of that, they're a part of that hashtag gaggle that's there in the Western Conference as a part of the get-in, where you're right now you're a win out of and a match in hand. So you got a match in hand, and you're a win out of being a part of the play-in discussion at the 8-9, the wild card game, and you've got that in the West, and then LAG brings in Furuhashi, and it's like you got some folks that are tinkering here with the window now open.
And I think too, I think you're going to see a big move from LAG as well. In addition to that,
okay.
I'm just saying, you Peck goes and you get a big influx of cash. They didn't use a DP spot on this signing, so I think something is in the works here.
Okay, and then lying in wait is another Vanny who it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if things went sideways later in the year. If you brought in Dylan from Ventura County just to kind of help things out, offensively for LAG, and it's a system pickup. So all you're doing is you're promoting him basically from MLS Next Pro, and I want to see how he translates. He's lighting up MLS Next Pro at Ventura County, but I want to see how he translates to Major League Soccer, and if things spiral for LAG later in the year, you might see that. And then we got the return of Alex Matan, which that was random. I mean, it's like, okay, oh yeah, I remember that guy in Columbus, and now he's in St. Louis City, and it's once again, it's like these little pieces that are here. Some folks, and you mentioned like LAG, you're expecting something larger to drop, but St. Louis City, because of past relationships with front offices and stuff, we knew what Matan was when he was with Crew. Now he's with St. Louis, and all caps. I thought that one was intriguing.
I did too, and I think that's probably a feather generally in MLS's cap, right? Where these are guys who are here, they play reasonably well here, they go elsewhere, and they're like, yeah, you know what? Maybe the grass isn't greener. Let's head back there. I mean, look at Kai Wagner, right, as another example for Philly. That's great that they get him back. I mean, look, they need a ton of help, obviously, but when he left, and certainly now, I mean, he's their best player. He's in his position, one of the best in the league, has been the entire time he was there. So, now DK, as you mentioned, coming back as well. So it's interesting to see these guys returning.
And with Philly, Ryan Richter had his press conference earlier this week. He's like, everybody is available who's a first team is available there. You got to insert Kai Wagner into that lineup. I mean, right now, with how things started with Bradley Carnell, it has gone off the rails, and they've got to bring in the safety inspector to the roller coaster just to see how bad things have been. I mean, one win in their first 15. You got to be reminded of stuff like that. One win in their first 15 for
and Orlando has given up more goals than that team too.
Yeah, by 14. 14 goals, man. It's just it's, with Philly, I look back and we talked about it with Bradley Carnell. Literally, it's just, I think, first time through the league, he's that pitcher that gets called up from AAA, goes 5 2/3, gives up a run, is pulled with runners on base, and maybe first time through the league, he's consistently giving you 5, maybe gives up an earned run or something like that. But then the second time through the league's got the book on you. They figured you out, and he can get you in a one-off. But if it's a series in the playoffs, they know what you're going to do, and so they can adjust when you really can't. And so now it's up to Philadelphia to figure things out. But, I mean, I'm not looking at a postseason or anything like that, but I'm just saying they got to figure ish out and figure out how they want to attack things now with the remainder of this season with only one win in their first 15. That's stunning still to look at.
No, it is. And I think, too, it's interesting because this has been a historic break, right, for Major League Soccer. There's never been anything like this. So I'm intrigued, just generally speaking, like how do the trends, do they continue, right? Yeah. From like back in, like May, right? Or whatever it was, it feels like, do those trends continue now? Like we saw a little bit of it with Nashville, right? Like, all right, well, Nashville, world beaters to start, Supporters Shield leaders. Can they get back on track? And it wasn't their best performance in their return, but they got the result they needed. They got the 3 points. So they're still there. And, we didn't see like San Jose and Vancouver, and, interested to see those teams as well. And two, now Chicago with Lewandowski as part of that fray, and how do they look, and how, and look at like a New England, for example, right? Like they were sneaky, kind of under the radar good through the first part of the season. Does that trend continue for them? Right. So, I mean, like those are just a few of them, but I think that it kind of goes across the board, right? What kind of, we always talk about the CONCACAF Champions Cup hangover, but geez, what about the World Cup hangover, right? How is that going to affect Miami, especially?
And let's see, it's no Messi and no Rodrigo for this weekend and for All-Star, at least with Messi. That much. I haven't seen anything about Rodrigo and All-Star or anything like that, but this week and
I think those guys need at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so it's going to be no Messi this week. So apologies to anyone who might have purchased tickets for either this week, the midweek today, or the weekend. You're not going to see him. And then he is not going to be a part of All-Star. I'm wondering, though, if the league encourages him to be on site for the All-Star next week, to sit there and go, hey, dude, can you just kind of like wave at people, something like that. So you at least have one of your big, planetary guns in the building just to kind of sit there and wave at everybody in Charlotte. I'm wondering if they ask him to do that.
I feel like if I'm him, like he took that plane straight to Rosario, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got like the noise canceling headphones on. My phone is completely off. I've drawn the blinds, right? I have like the dark shades, and I'm just gonna sleep for 4 straight days.
Yes, I mean that's like, look, my phone's off, and if you try to call the boss, she's gonna show me who's calling, and then we're gonna sit there and go swipe right. Not gonna happen. I haven't even asked you about the World Cup. I mean, what did you think about? We can go from the final backward, or we can talk about the tournament on the whole. What did you think about the World Cup?
Yeah, I would say tournament on the whole, probably the best that I've seen, right?
Okay.
Like I go back to 90 is my first one that I really watched. And I think in general, and I don't know, I mean, people talked about the expanded field watering things down, but maybe it also um, led to some better stories, right? Like a Cape Verde, right? That kind of story. And look how close they were to winning the World Cup. They tied Spain and they took Argentina to stoppage time, right?
Oh man.
But that story we wouldn't have had that in the last World Cup, or
Mhm.
So I think generally I thought it was very good. I mean, obviously people will complain about hydration breaks and VAR and other type of things like that, but I thought the on the field product was really good. And I thought, you looked at the semifinals, and I thought both were outstanding. One was great, and then the other one topped it, right? Like, Spain and France was was really good. The one that you were fortunate enough to see there with Argentina and England was amazing.
Oh,
Um, and then you saw the third place match, and the third place match is great. It's always off the rails. It's one of my favorite matches. I want to lobby for a third place match in Major League Soccer, right? Like, have the two semifinalists, have them play, and that one will be like 10-8 or something like that. But
fantastic.
but it all ramped up. You're like, oh man, this is going to be some final after those semifinals, and then obviously it wasn't, unfortunately. Spain just choked the life out of Argentina. Argentina literally tried to do the same after the whistle. And then even that, like, it was 20-0. The shots, when the goal was scored, it was 20-0 in shots.
Uh-huh.
And yet still somehow, some way, Messi almost did it at the end, right? Puts the shot off the face, a couple of corners, a scramble in front, a shot goes over the bar. Like, they had no business being in that match. And credit to, I mean, Martinez, he was entering Tim Howard territory with saves.
Well, I mean, I would reverse that. I'd sit there and I'd go that Tim Howard goes into Emi Martinez territory. But yeah, the last thing I think that anybody ever wants is to go into a penalty kick shootout against Emi Martinez.
100%.
Because I mean, and he was playing with what, 2 broken fingers?
Yeah.
The entire tournament. And still, and he was working, he was being a fantastic asador, and and he was getting all of that done, but he was playing with 2 broken fingers as a goalie on the highest international stage known to mankind.
11 saves, I think it was, in the final.
It's ridiculous what he does when he's, and we get to watch him in the Premier League when he's there with Villa, and Destination obviously coming up new. But on the international stage, it's almost like Emi Martinez hits another gear.
100%. Yeah.
And
that's not the same one. Like, Villa fans like, wait, this isn't that guy that we.
No. And that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you want to put those guys in front of me at Villa, then we'll have a discussion. But it's crazy how someone whose game is what it is gets elevated that much more in an international competition. And I'm like, dude, the last thing I want, although to see a penalty kick shootout between Unai Simon and Emi Martinez would have been off the rails.
True.
And that would have been fantastic. But yeah, to your point, I know a lot of folks were sitting there and they were squeamish about the field of 48, and we would not have gotten DR Congo. We would not have gotten Cabo Verde. We would not have gotten 9 of the 10 teams from African qualifiers making it into the knockout stages. And look, you and I both know, as people that have been in the media for a day or two, we're going to the field of 64. We know this, but it's an easy, and I was explaining this to the boss last night, and I said, it's an easy piece of math. If you go to the field of 64, yes, you add 20 matches, but if you're going to have 6 countries having matches in the tournament upcoming, you should be okay when it comes to logistics and scheduling and stuff. But you look at that field of 64, it's, you go with groups of 4 all the way across the board. And then that way you've got 16 groups of 4. Top 2 teams qualify. You've got your 32. You don't have to worry about all this silly math as much.
Third place and
you don't have to worry about all that stuff. So since all of the contracts here for television, they all ended simultaneously, that's going to be the bargaining chip and all of this. It's like, okay, yeah, we're going to 64. You've got to handle it. It's got to be, English and Spanish. And then it's like, look, you're going to have this many more hydration breaks to do with as you see fit, because I think the number was, I think it was $250 million that was picked up by Big FOX. I think the way that they decided to use a hydration break with the extra advertising revenue. So you're going to be paying billions of dollars anyway. So this will be a way to get some of that back by having more matches and more hydration breaks, etc. So, I mean, look, we know what's coming. Just don't have like early round stuff in Dayton. Don't do anything on a Tuesday in Dayton, Ohio before you go into the tournament, wherever that's going to be.
Those numbers too, right? For the final, was it a combined 64 million maybe in the States?
66. 66 million with Telemundo and with Big FOX. Big FOX peaked in the 40s. 40 plus million people in their peak, but 66 million adding all the platforms and the streaming and all this kind of stuff. So the numbers were there. And look, this hemisphere can handle infrastructure. It's in place. It's like, when you stack a show, I was talking to this yesterday. It's like, we know how to stack a show. It's like, your favorite sportscast comes on. So SportsCenter comes on the old days. And you know what the rundown looks like. But then when the show starts, that's when you've got to figure out, okay, Dan and Keith, I need you to fill another 30 here. You need to cut this. We've got a live shot going in, all this kind of stuff. Everybody, this hemisphere can get to the show open. And they're ready to figure out what else happens within the show because they've done it so many times on so many different venues. Here, it's not a problem. It's a challenge, but it's not a problem. Other places, not so much. And that's what I think worries me about all of these other venues and all these other countries, whether we're talking women's or men's. Can you handle the increased load? Do you have enough load bearing vehicles that can do this kind of stuff?
Well, I think that's where, to your point, I think what we're going to see an expanded World Cup, but we're also going to continue to see the expansion of co-hosts, right? So, like, not even a joke, I could even potentially see an entire, like, South America hosting a World Cup and just having matches in every country. Even though there's leagues in, every one of those countries, right? Like, the days of, Italy 1990, or like in Germany and France, like those days are done. Like but I think, the more you expand the field and then you expand the countries, the more you can, handle, I think, that load.
But I think 64 should be your limit.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
And I think that we learned with a field of 48 that the world margins are closing. It's not something, and we were talking.
That was the worry, right? Like, people were saying, oh man, you expand it, we're going to have 10-1 scores in the group stage. And that didn't happen, right? Like, Cape Verde is like, hang on, we're going to tie the eventual champion.
Yeah. I mean, you had Curacao, Germany, which was 7-1. But you had that moment in Houston where literally, it was WrestleMania 18. It was literally the Rock and Hogan. Curacao scores to tie it at 1. Everybody started rooting for Curacao that was a neutral in that building. And I mean, yes, it finished 7-1, and I get that, but that's what you got to see. You got to see that those teams that were below from 32 to 48 come in, make some noise, and see what happens with all of that. And I thought that was, for me, a reminder that the margins are closing because of nationality declarations and things like that. If you don't get your first choice, okay, where else can I go play? And DR Congo is an example of that, because you had Vissa and Wan-Bissaka and Axel Tuanzebe. You had 2 Premier Leaguers for DR Congo starting on your back line.
Yeah.
So it's not like, they're coming in from, the Kazakhstan Premier League or something like that, and being flown in to be a part of the back line for DR Congo. But to see in Algeria, to see a Morocco continue to grow, to see everything on the African continent grow, to get all of this impact. Anybody that thinks that the world still has gap space, yeah, that might be true, but it's not as big as you think. And you've got to continue to sit there and navigate it as best you can. This week, Pochettino is supposed to announce one way or the other. What do you think?
I think he goes.
Okay. All right. Because you'd have to stay. For me, if you're staying for the cycle. You're staying for all 4 years. And I know that he wants to get back into a big ticket item, to be a coach in the actual individual teams instead of national teams. But
yeah, I mean, think about it too. Look, it's a unique pressure to coach a national team hosting a World Cup, right? Like an immense amount of pressure. But
yes,
that said, he didn't have to worry about qualifying, right?
Yeah.
Like this is now where, and granted, again, to your point, it's going to expand. It's going to be easier for the U.S. to qualify, but it's not so much fun to go to Honduras on a hot Wednesday afternoon. I don't know.
Oh, brother.
Whatever other job is, staring him at the face, probably has some sexier destinations than that.
Yeah. I mean, you get to sit out a year, or you get to sit out till Christmas time, and then Boxing Day, and everybody starts freaking out, and then jobs get back open all over again.
Exactly.
All right. So when do you actually start on the desk? 7:00, shortly before?
No, I'm coming in hot. Well, first, I mean, look, matches don't start till 7:38, right?
Yeah.
So I'll jump on at 7:30.
Okay. And then I'm hoping that there is no chaos and no weather delays and things like that.
Oh, don't even. That's the one part that.
Yeah.
That's always super fun.
Yes, they always are. And
trust me, you got like Houston's always one that has that. Colorado is always seemingly in one of those. So yeah.
St. Louis, right there in the middle of it all. Kansas City. Those darn Midwesterners causing all of the problems for the rest of us. As always, my friend, it's always great to chop it up with you on Wednesdays and to discuss everything now that the sprint begins in earnest with 2 matches in 4 days for everybody, and then we're off and running. I wish you nothing but caffeine working as it does, and quiet between now and 7:38, and we'll be catching up with you again next week. So always great to see you, my friend.
Same, bud.
There he goes. He's a dad, Dylan Butler. That's what the mug says. So Dylan Butler, MLSsoccer.com, chopping it up with us to break down everything going on in Major League Soccer. Speaking of which, it's that time where we look at everything. Who's doing what? Ref crews, analysis, all the things. We get to do that. So now, here we go. Atlanta United did announce short-term deals for Arif Kovac, Toto Majoub, and Ignacio Suarez Corey. And so those 3 are coming up for short terms. And don't be surprised. Once again, this one is laid out for Charlotte tonight. So 8:25 would be my guess. It's supposed to be an 8:00 kick. So I would anticipate that Abe and Maddie on 92.9 The Game will start things off at 7. Expanded because it's on Big FOX. It's on Apple, FS1, and Fox Deportes, 92.9 The Game. So it's on FS1. That one is tonight. Anticipate something in the neighborhood of 8:25. Because anytime FOX is involved, they want the big, super, hyper, mega pregame show. So think 8:25. Mike and Jason will be there with you. Like I said, Abe and Maddie will have 5 Stripes Countdown. Then it's Mike and Jason. And then it's 5 Stripes After Dark afterwards. It's a full-time report after that. Then the team does not come home. Team will stay in Charlotte, I believe, an extra day. They're going to be traveling, I believe, tomorrow later. And they're heading up to New England. I don't know if they're flying into Providence or if they're flying into Boston to navigate everything in Logan. Fly to Providence, get some good food. Go to the Hill, get some good Italian. And then you've got the matchup on the weekend against the Revs. That's 7:40 in Foxborough on Saturday night. So, according to rules and regs, just to remind you, a club may sign a player 25 or younger during the league season from their affiliate to a maximum of 4 short-term agreements up to 4-day contracts. And so that's where this comes in. You sign them starting today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So they're good for the doubleheader. Each season, maximum of 16 days. Individual player may be included on up to 4 MLS league season match rosters each season, thus the 4x4 in 16 days. However, that player may appear in no more than 2. An individual player may appear in any number of non-league games during the terms of their 4 short-term agreements. Okay, timeout. Well, actually, let me go through the stats, and then I'll call a timeout. We know what Arif Kovac has been doing, second in MLS Next Pro, 16 goal contributions. He has the Golden Boot right now with 13. So he's 13-3 this season for Atlanta United 2. Kovac, 5 goals and had an assist, May the 16th against Huntsville. That is a Next Pro record for goals and goal contributions in a single match. 13 of 17 appearances starts. MLS Next Pro Player of the Match Week for Match Week 19. Goal and assist for the win against Messi and Friends 2 up in Athens. Second ever Atlanta United 2 player to reach double-digit goals in a season. Toto Majoub now back healthy. Got a cup of coffee last time out in the action for the Twos. When they were in Huntsville, and when they were in Athens against Inter Miami. 12 MLS Next Pro matches last season, 10 starts, first career goal back on August 31st. 4 of his 7 MLS Next Pro appearances have been starts. He's represented the Ugandan U20s. Ignacio Suarez Corey, and got his first professional goal August 27th in the win over Inter Miami CF2, youngest ever Atlanta United player to do so at 16 years, 146 days. Suarez Corey has a goal, and he picked that up last time out. 4 assists, 14 appearances, youngest Atlanta United 2 player to reach 5 goal contributions in a season in the MLS Next Pro era. Made his international debut for the U17s on the U.S. side back on June 7th. So Suarez Corey, Toto Majoub, Arif Kovac. They're a part of the crew that is in Charlotte and in New England. I have an issue with the rule. The fact that you can call them up 4 times, okay, fine. The fact that you can have them up for 4 days, okay, fine. But the fact that you can only use them in 2 of those 4 call-ups, that to me is counterproductive and counterintuitive. If they can only be in 2, then why would you burn a call up? But I would, if I was, and I'm not, but to have these short-term agreements, I would make them more like what we see in the NBA, where a player gets called up for a 10-day and you can call him up for another one, and there are limits to those 10 days, but you can play in as many matches in that 10-day window as possible instead of being hamstrung to be called up 4 times and only be used in 2. You're basically burning a player. And if for some reason, and you'd never wish this on any kind of a franchise, that player that you call up, sure, you've used them twice, but then you come up in a position where you need a player at a specific position and you've already burned that player, it doesn't help out the competitive aspect of the league. It needs to be something where a player can be called up. Actually, if it was more like Major League Baseball, just look, you call the player up and he's available, you send him back down. Just that, to me, it would be more beneficial for the clubs themselves in Major League Soccer to have that availability, where you don't have to sit there and think about having to use a player that you call up on a short-term agreement. So from here, I will raise my hand and I will sit there and go, if you could please address this issue, that would be great. Because you're hamstringing, you have hamstrung your leagues and your managers with this rule and this idea of, okay, I can pull him up 4 times, but I can only use him twice. What if I need him that 3rd time? I'm screwed. That doesn't help competitive efforts in Major League Soccer if you want to continue to grow. Either treat it like the NBA, where you can call them up for 10 days, many times as you want. Major League Baseball, you call them up on the roster. If you need them to pinch hit 5 days in a row, cool. If you need them to start on a night game that ended late on a Saturday and you've got a Sunday 105 first pitch and you need him to start, you've got him available for both of those. It's counterintuitive to me to have that as a rule, and you can only use a player half the time. Great, you've warmed the seat. The seat has stayed dry in a rainstorm with a player sitting on it. Can we use him? Oh, no, that's right. We've already used him twice. So this road trip, you get Kovac, Toto Majub, Ignacio Suarez, Curry, adding everything here. So it is the second short-term agreement for Majub and Suarez Curry. Therefore, they have two more that they can be used for this year, and the first for Arif Kovac. So then, depending on availability and usage, you've got to keep an eye on what's going on with Atlanta United too, because they play this weekend as well. And they're having me look at the schedule quickly. So for the twos, they're the first game that is supposed to be going on Sunday morning. Right now it's listed as an 11 a.m. kick. Listed as an 11 a.m. kick and a venue TBC'd. So if you have three of your big guns, including your leading scorer and your Golden Boot leader in MLS Next Pro, and they have a game in Foxborough on Saturday night, then flying them back, probably get in about 2:30 in the morning, get in a quick nap, and then go to the park. They might be available, but they may not start. So we'll see what Jose Silva gets to do with all of his jigsaw puzzle pieces for the Sunday match, with the team coming home, the first team coming home late on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. It looks like you will have players available that Junior Alonso is settling in, and it looks like for Atlanta United going into this matchup, once again, Cooper Sanchez, under normal circumstances, would have been in Utah/Mexico to help out in the U20s and CONCACAF, but he has to stay because of Jay Fortune's injury, and it's going to be a couple of weeks. 3 to 4 weeks with a hamstring, and we know how persnickety hamstrings can be. So club reached out directly to the staff and around the U19 squad. And once again, Braden Dunham, we talked to him yesterday. That's available on the network. So Braden Dunham is there, and they were in Utah yesterday heading down to Mexico to prepare because action starts this weekend for them. And they asked to keep him, meaning Cooper Sanchez, rather than release him for national team duty. Tata Martino said he was personally involved in that conversation. And so Tata said that with people from the technical staff for Coach Gonzalo Sagades, explained the situation to Cooper. The next two matches, he's going to stay. So Junior Alonso is in and getting ready to get minutes. So Tristan Muyimba was asked about his new partner at center back. And Tristan said, I think he'll bring a lot of leadership, calmness into the defense. Still a bit quiet, still learning about him. Good guy. Speaks a little bit of French because he played a couple of years in France. Came into play as a center back. Totally valid alternative, according to Tata Martino, that in some matches we might have to use him at left back. Alonso played left back during World Cup with Paraguay out of necessity. And so as you go into what happened in the matchup with Nashville, Tata Martino was as angry as I've seen him in a while. Short answers in the post-match. He was, he said there's 80 minutes to take from that match. Asked about it, he said, I think positionally we made a mistake. That's how they scored the goal. Still framed the overall 90 minutes as one of their more complete performances, and this is what we've been talking about with Abe and with Maddie. You look at the 80 minutes instead of saying, yeah, they had a good first 25. Yeah, they had a good first 40. Yeah, they had a good first half. They had a good first. You had a good 80 now. You just did defensively. You did not. You had two chances, one better than the other. The Luke Brennan chance and then the Latte Lot chance late to put a goal in the net. If that Luke Brennan shot goes past Ryan Schwacke, then game state changes and all that kind of stuff. And we talk about that a lot here. So you got to finish your chances. And you're trying to figure out also where you can put Alexi. Once again, because he is as versatile as he is, he can be a forward, 10, winger, deeper central midfielder. And so when you're looking at the opponent, then you're going to sit there and gauge where Alexi can be. So Alexi is your wild card in all of this because he is so versatile. And so that's what you're kind of looking at now with Atlanta United heading to Charlotte and then heading to New England. 7 o'clock pregame, 92.9 the game on the Odyssey app. Kickoff coming up, I want to say 8:25. So that's the rundown there when it comes to Atlanta United. Juice boxes for the rest of the matches. 7:40 starts. Messi and friends hosting Chicago. Lewandowski in play at a plus 175. 90-minute draws a plus 300. And Inter Miami is a plus 129. Crew and NYC. Crew is a minus 111. Draw is a plus 280. NYC is a plus 300. 7:40 at TQL, Cincinnati and Vancouver. Cincinnati, a big underdog at a plus 275. Draw is a plus 320. Vancouver is a minus 120. Revs hosting Toronto, even money plus 100. Both Toronto and the draw are a plus 260. 7:40, Philadelphia and Red Bulls. Expect the insertion of Kai Wagner into the starting lineup at the back, especially with the displeasure that Olwetu Makanya has expressed, and he wants out the door. So he did not come back after the World Cup break. So Wagner in, Makanya out. Union a minus 147, favored at home. Interesting. Draw plus 333. Red Bulls are a plus 350. Charlotte plus 104. At home against Atlanta United. Both the draw and Atlanta United are a plus 260. 8:40. Nashville hosting Montreal at a minus 189. Draws a plus 350. CF Montreal is a plus 5.25. Christian Miles and KCD are in Houston at Hell in a Shell. They're a minus 130 hosting DC at a plus 350. Draws a plus 280. Sporting and Minnesota United. SKC a plus 250. Draws a plus 290. Loons are an even money plus 100. 9:40. Austin and Seattle. Austin is a plus 200 with their interim coach. Draw is a plus 250. Seattle is a plus 125. Colorado and San Diego FC. San Diego FC. Colorado minus 105. Draws a plus 300. San Diego is a plus 270. 10:40s, and there are 4 of them. Portland hosting FC Dallas at a plus 135. Draws a plus 290. And FC Dallas is a plus 190. LAFC hosting RSL. LAFC is a minus 149, draws a plus 330. RSL is a plus 359. LAG is a plus 100. Once again, Furuhashi-san now in LAG. Don't know if he will wave from the sidelines or what. LAG even money plus 100. St. Louis City is a plus 240, draws a plus 280. And last one on the board at 10:40, San Jose and the purple team rolling out of Griezmann and Daryl Dike. San Jose is a minus 167, draws a plus 370. And Orlando City is a plus 375. Sorry, Orlando. There you go. So those are your numbers for those matchups. Now, to let you know who is in the middle for these matches and let you see who is going to be calling matches. And what we will do is we will analyze the assignments for Major League Soccer, and we will let you know what to expect possibly from the dossier that we build on the individuals. FC Cincinnati and Vancouver at TQL. John Freeman is the man in the middle. Walt Heatherly and Nick Baltzer are your ARs. Philip Dujic, however, is your fourth. David Barry and John Krill are upstairs. Columbus Crew and NYC at Scott's Miracle Grove Field. And in that one, it is Lorenzo Hernandez, who is the man in the middle. Megan Mullen and Kevin Locke are your ARs. Atahan Yaya is your fourth. Lucas Zapala and Mike Kampmeinert are upstairs. Also on the board, Messi and Friends hosting Chicago Fire at New Stadium. And hang on just a second. I've got to attend to something off camera, but I'm going to continue talking here. So Messi and Friends in Chicago Fire at New Stadium. Rubiel Vasquez is the man in the middle. Nick Uranga, Jose De Silva are your ARs. Edson Carvajal is your fourth. Kevin Stott and Fabio Tovar are upstairs. Revs in Toronto, Sergei Demyanchuk is the man in the middle at Gillette. And I think they can put everything back now. They can actually, they can call it Gillette. And then they can actually put towers back and all the branding and all that kind of stuff that had to be taken down for the tournament that we all just watched. So it is Sergei Demyanchuk in the middle. Logan Brown and Ben Regal are your ARs. Jeremy Shear is your fourth. Jose Carlos Rivero and TJ Zablocki are upstairs. Subaru Park, Fotis Bazakos is the man in the middle. Leah's Arfa, Justin Howard are your ARs. Alejo Kalume, who was the man in the middle for Atlanta United 2 and Huntsville City Football Club last weekend, is your fourth. Edvin Jurasevich and Tom Felice are upstairs. So for Charlotte and Atlanta, Sergi Boyko is the man in the middle. Corey Rockwell, Tyler Y. Rostick, your ARs. Joshua Encarnacion is your fourth. Daniel Redford, Jonathan Johnson are upstairs. We will circle back and discuss Sergi Boyko's year and what to look at in trends coming up in a bit. Austin FC in Seattle from Q2. Ricardo Montero Araya is the man in the middle. Stefan Tanaka-Freund and Brian Dunn are your ARs. Elton Garcia is your fourth. Eunice Marakchi and Melissa Beck are upstairs. Helena Shell, Houston, and DC United with Christian Miles and KCD. Victor Rivas is the man in the middle. Jeffrey Greason and Ben Pilgrim are your ARs. Rodrigo Albuquerque is your fourth. Kevin Terry Jr., Cameron Blanchard are upstairs. Sporting Kansas City and Minnesota United. Matthew Corrigan, Chris Elliott is the man in the middle. Chris Elliott, Ryan Graves are your ARs. Remy Tuchon is your fourth. Ismir Pekmich and Joshua Patlak are upstairs. Nashville and CF Montreal. Marcus de Oliveira is the man in the middle. Gerard Carter-Lebuy and Oscar Mitchell Carvalho are your ARs. Rosendo Mendoza is your fourth. Katja Koroleva and Craig Lowry are upstairs. Colorado and San Diego at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. Chris Penso is the man in the middle. Jeremy Hansen and Matt Trotter are your ARs. Ricardo Fiera is your fourth. Sean Tahini and Robert Schapp are upstairs. LAG and St. Louis City from Carson, California. Malik Badawi is the man in the middle. Ian McKay and Felicia Mariscal are your ARs. Brandon Stevis is your fourth. Lucas Zapala and Mike Kampmeinert are upstairs. LAFC and RSL. Pierre-Luc Lozier is the man in the middle at BMO. Matthew Nelson and Rhett Hamill are your ARs. The fourth is Servando Berna. David Barry and John Krill are upstairs. Portland and FCD, Alexis De Silva is the man in the middle. Corey Richardson, Diego Blas are your ARs. Alan Chapman is your fourth. Edvin Jurasevich and Tom Felice are upstairs. Also, late night, it is Alexis De Silva at Portland and FCD. We mentioned that one. Alexis De Silva, Corey Richardson, Diego Blas, Alan Chapman, Edvin Jurasevich, Tom Felice. And then San Jose and Orlando City at PayPal Park. Elihu Adegin is the man in the middle. Adam Winkowski, Mike Nickerson, your ARs. Timothy Ford is your fourth. JC Rivera and TJ Zablocki are upstairs. So let's go back and look at the year that we have seen from Sergi Boyko. So now, looking at the Sergi Boyko numbers and trends when it comes to how they have been calling matches this year, we go to our friends at Who Scored. And what they do is they break it all down for us, and they give you the numbers for referees, team stats, player stats, what have you. So as we go into the numbers themselves. Sergi Boyko is 18th out of 32 in matches called with 7, so he's tied for 17th, basically. Sergi Boyko, when it comes to the number of fouls called per match, is in the second half of the 32. He is 29th out of 32 in fouls called per match, at 21 fouls a match so far this season. So he's 29th out of 32. Jair Marufo has called 21 fouls on average. Torrey Penso, 19.6. Alan Chapman in 12 matches. He is well off the pace at 17.5. So Sergi Boyko, 29th out of 32, calling only 21 fouls a match. Fouls per tackle, he is 30th of 32 at 0.64. So then he has also called in his matches this year. He has called, when it comes to penalties, he has called the 4th highest amount of penalties per match this year. He has 1 red card in 7 matches, but he is 4th in penalties per match at 0.57. So that means that he has called 4 penalties in 7 matches this year. 4 penalties in 7 matches. He is 4th in penalties per match average, 29th in fouls called per game. So he doesn't call a whole lot of fouls, but he's not afraid to call penalties. Yellows per game, lower half, if not worse. He is 27th out of 32 in yellows per match at 3.29. So doesn't call a whole lot of fouls, doesn't give out a whole lot of yellows, but he has called 4 penalties in 7 matches this year. And obviously the number of yellow cards, he's got 23 yellows in his 7 matches this year, which puts him 24th out of 32. But once again, you're also discussing he has the highest number of matches called from the center that has the least amount of yellow cards, if that makes any sense. So you have, of 32 individuals, short of Jair Marufo's 6 matches and only 13 yellows, Jair Marufo far and away the lowest average of yellows per match for anyone that has called more than, say, 3 matches. 2.17. Sergi Boyko is at 3.29. He is at 24th out of 32, but you can take 5 of them away because they've only called either 1, 2, or 3 matches in the middle. You can take actually 6 of them away. And then you would have Ricardo Fierro, who's called 4, Jair Marufo, who's called 6, Sergi Boyko, who's called 7. But of everyone, Sergi Boyko is 24th. Number of yellows. But once again, he's called 7 matches. Doesn't give a whole lot of yellows. Doesn't call a whole lot of fouls. Has given a penalty in more than half of his 7 matches this year. And he has given a 1 red card in 7 matches. So that's your numerical breakdown of the tendencies of Sergi Boyko in the match against Charlotte. Not a whole lot of fouls called. Not afraid to call a penalty, but he doesn't give up a whole lot of yellows either. So game might be let go a little bit. We'll see if that happens with Sergi Boyko as the man in the middle tonight with Atlanta United and Charlotte FC. So once again, 7 o'clock is your pregame, and that's Five Stripes Countdown, 92.9 The Game in the Odyssey app. And then everything rolls back into play when it comes to the activity. Like I said, my guess is it's going to be 8:25. There'll be an 8:25 kick, and it'll be that run as we go. News from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. 544,516 fans, 8 matches, including the semifinal. 4,000 credentialed media, more than 100 countries. 13,000 hotel rooms within walking distance, 500,000 fans, 19 operational days of free programming. 79 terabytes of data used on stadium Wi-Fi, 18.3 terabytes of data usage in the semifinal alone, 1.4 million food and beverage items served across more than 585,000 transactions, 118,054 Coke souvenir cups sold, average of one every 1.5 seconds concession was open. 91% of waste diverted from landfill, 8,500 pounds of food recovered, donated to Atlantans in need through second helpings. 800 pieces of furniture left over from the tournament, donated by AMBSE to the Furniture Bank of Metro Atlanta. And LEED version 4.1 platinum certification achieved during the tournament. Highest recognition for how sustainably an existing building operates, earned nearly a decade after MBS opened as an LEED platinum venue. So that's your run from Mercedes-Benz Stadium and how they did stuff here during the tournament. So very, very cool there when it came to what we already knew, frankly. We already knew that Mercedes-Benz in the city were going to step up, and you did in a bunch of different ways. And well done by all of you. Fantastic stuff. Like I said, not that it wasn't a surprise for a double negative, but it was out there. Gossip, rumor, and innuendo, what to watch, where to watch it, how to watch it. That's brought to us by our friends at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. That link is important, helps them out, helps us out, helps you out when it comes to watching the beautiful game. And you can catch it in a bunch of different places. You got a lot of different options. You get a lot of the A and B divisions in South America. You get TVV out of Venezuela, CDO Plus out of Chile, Liga 1 Max Pro out of Peru, Tigo Sports, CATV Ties, Teisei out of Argentina. You get all the BNs, which means you got Sudamericana last night. You'll get Sudamericana tonight, as everything that is on the board for now. It's like literally you're out of the World Cup break, and in South America, you go straight into Sudamericana. Straight into Sudamericana. No wasted motion at all. So Sudamericana is up and running. You had those matches last night. So tonight and this afternoon, here's what you're watching. It is Sudamericana 6 and 8:30 on BN. Medellin and Vasco da Gama is at 6. Sporting Cristal and Bragantino is at 8:30. CBS Sports Network, USL Championship, Lexington and Oakland Roots is at 7. FS1 has your doubleheader of Charlotte and Atlanta United and LAFC and RSL. I would anticipate 8:25 and 10:50 or 10:55. BN and Espanol simulcasting everything from Sudamericana. Fox Deportes simulcasting FS1. Apple TV, you have all of your matchups that we talked about. You've also got ESPN Plus, USL Championship, Colorado Springs, and the Miami FCs at 9 o'clock from Widener Field in beautiful downtown Colorado Springs. Portland Hearts of Pine, Union Omaha's at 7. Westchester SC and the Cosmos are at 7. Fox O&E is broadcasting, simulcasting Major League Soccer. Your 2 MLS Next Pro matches tonight. Core and Messi and Friends 2 at 6:30. Whitecaps and Austin FC 2, Los Verdos, are at 9 o'clock. 2:45 Scottish League Cup Queens of the South and Aberdeen at 2:45. And USL Championship Lexington and Oakland Roots. Women's professional soccer on the Plus tonight, 9 o'clock. Calgary and Ottawa in the Northern Super League. That list is brought to you by our friends at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Let's check the Twitters and see if we've missed anything when it's come to all of our folks and all of our choices. Ben Jacobs, very, very busy man. Got a lot of stuff that happened in and around his sourcing this morning. Nottingham Forest optimistic on Ousmane Diomande, package discussed in the region of €40 million. Sporting have yet to receive a formal offer for the center back. They have insisted no formal bid. Ipswich currently formalizing Dyson Maida's move from Celtic, £10 million package there. Phil Foden signed a new Manchester City contract, keeping him at the club until summer of 2030. He has the smiling into the camera and the pen hovering over the contract, so therefore we know it's official. Chelsea exploring the midfield market after seeing the £64 million bid for Alex Scott rejected. Another midfielder arriving, not a guarantee. Enzo Fernandez will be sold, but Chelsea remain open to Fernandez signing a new contract if the club's £120 million evaluation met an exit is possible this summer. Luka Modric signed a 1-year extension at Milan, finalizing terms for the 40-year-old in a new 1-year deal. Issa Diop has joined Fulham on a 4-year deal from Fulham. Fee is €10 million. Arsenal women have signed Spain goalie Misa Rodriguez on a free after her departure from Real Madrid. And we mentioned the Amit Bhatia purchase and Jeff Bezos' interest. Also mentioned Tonda Eckert. We mentioned Pep Guardiola as well. Celtic have inquired about James Penrice as an option to support Kieran Tierney this season. And so we'll keep an eye on all of those moves. A lot of moves that we had discussed involving Major League Soccer. Ugo Kuiper's once again looking at a fee of around $8 million, finalizing the deal from Chicago Fire. Also, sources have from Bogart, Toronto FC have agreed to a deal to sign German defensive midfielder Niklas Dorsch from Heidenheim. That comes from Fabrizio Romano. Deal's worth up to $4.2 million, including add-ons. The fixed fee makes it lower. Dorsch is likely to be a DP, but can be bought down in the future. They view him as an important defensive midfielder in their rebuild. We mentioned Furuhashi-san getting signed yesterday. St. Louis has agreed to a deal to sign Danish attacker Carlo Hulsa from Samsunspor. According to sources, Hulsa will be joining for a fee of around $6 million. Transfermarkt had his value at about $7 million. He can play in the middle of the attack, or he can play on the right-hand side. His goal contributions, his goals scored have increased over the last 3 years, double digits last year with Samsunspor, 8+4 last season. So it's Carlo Hulsa signing as a DP after a $6 million transfer. So keep an eye on that, and with what is going on in Major League Soccer. Obviously, the window open, Breeze is coming in, and we're going to keep an eye on anything and everything that's going to be attached to that. Other gossip and rumor and innuendo. We've got to get into that before we get out of here. And tomorrow, just to give you an idea about what's going on, we're going to check in on Barrie, Ontario, and the movement. Relocation's not really. That makes it sound kind of negative. But the Toronto FC2, the Young Reds' home base, will move to Barrie, Ontario in 2 seasons. And so we're going to catch up with the folks who were behind that, batting leadoff tomorrow. And then we'll go over everything that happened in Major League Soccer and all your news. Then we got the Power Hour with Nino and Nico from 10 to 11 whenever, and then we'll wrap up there. But we're going to start off with Barrie, Ontario and Major League Soccer tomorrow. Then we'll get into Major League Soccer with Atlanta United and everything that happens tonight. Then we got the Power Hour with Nino and Nico. We got Sudamericana to get into. We got to figure out the Pan Am games. We also have to figure out the dessert from Nino, and if he's got pilots that are flying north. So that's the that's the rundown there for tomorrow. So looking at, let's see, Spain's stars were awarded tomatoes for their World Cup win. Memo Ochoa retired after a 22-year career. That video was posted yesterday as well. So Memo, very, very cool. And to see him get that last moment in the Azteca for the home match in the group stage, very, very cool for him as the number 3 keeper for El Tri. But Memo Ochoa hangs it up. So your trending rumors: Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs keeping tabs on the situation involving Marcus Rashford, according to iNews. United keen to offload him after the loan to Barcelona was not turned into a €30 million permanent deal. Some reluctance to have him join a Premier League rival. 25 goal contributions, 49 matches, all comps for Barca last year, prioritizing joining a top club in Champions League after dismissing interest from Galatasaray and Fenerbahce. United exploring a move for Real Madrid midfielder Eduardo Camavinga. Nicolas Shearer reports Los Blancos now willing to listen to offers to sign him. Previously viewed as a key player for the future, Camavinga wanted several players linked with a switch to Old Trafford, where it looks like the club's hierarchy, according to the 4-letter, plotting one more marquee addition in the midfield after getting Andre Santos and Yuri Tielemans. We mentioned Chelsea having their £64 million offer to Alex Scott and Bournemouth turned down, according to the BBC. £80 million valuation, monitored by Manchester United and Arsenal. Final 2 years of his deal, 37 appearances last year. Sky Sports says he has dismissed multiple offers to sign an extension. City have entered talks to sign Lille midfielder Ayoub Bouadi, according to Nicolas Shearer. Agreement in principle over wages has already been reached. And It would be in a contract until the summer of 31. Reports have indicated it could take a fee of worth £85 million to sign him. City wanted to get the deal done quickly because apparently there are 2 other clubs in Europe that are chasing. Chelsea and United tracking Fenerbahce left back Archie Brown, according to Team Talk, and they view him as a strong fit in Xabi Alonso's system. Both clubs have been in contact with his reps, United viewing him as a cheaper alternative to Newcastle's Lewis Hall. Bruno Guimaraes, Arsenal have opened direct talks with Newcastle regarding a deal for him, according to the 3-letter paper. Take the information at your own peril. Reportedly told the Magpies he wants to make a switch to the Emirates before the new campaign begins. Still some distance between himself and both sides regarding the transfer fee. Gunners currently making an offer of around 60. Guimaraes still has 2 years remaining on his deal. Newcastle want closer to £100 million. Mentioned Misa Rodriguez, Morgan Rogers, Elijah Upson has signed a professional contract with Arsenal after deciding to leave Spurs. 18-year-old center back, son of former Arsenal and England defender Matthew Upson, had been in Spurs Academy, reported to have offered terms to stay out after his scholarship contract finished at the end of June. Villa have made a bid to sign Garnacho on a loan from Chelsea, possible obligation to sign permanently. Told he can leave after a poor first season following his move from Manchester United, during which he really had not much of an impact. Understood that the player is easily convinced to depart. He's eager to go. City's midfielder Rodri pushing to join Real Madrid, according to Fabrizio Romano. Barcelona have made contact with the reps of Aymeric Laporte at Athletic Club. That's from Sport. 4-letter paper. Chelsea striker Nico Jackson open to reuniting with his former manager Unai Emery at Aston Villa. Arsenal winger Reece Nelson on the radar of Fulham, Valencia, and Benfica as he enters the final year of his deal. That's from the BBC. Gazzetta RB Leipzig winger Antonio Nusa attracting interest from Roma. Nicolo Schira, Galatasaray made an offer to AC Milan winger Rafa Leao, but he is prioritizing a move to a team in the Premier League. Chelsea have entered the race for John Stones, who is a free agent, and he's also been linked with Arsenal. It's from Team Talk. We mentioned Phil Foden with his pen hovering over a contract, so that is official through 2031. Fabrizio Romano, Real Madrid open to parting ways with defender Raul Asensio permanently if they get the right deal. Foot Mercato, AS Roma interested in Chelsea center back Axel Disasi. Team Talk, Everton interested in Bodo Glimt forward Jens Petter Hauge. The Telegraph, Besiktas in talks regarding a potential deal for Newcastle midfielder Joe Willock. Sorry, Alex. Telegraph again, Nottingham Forest have made a £30 million offer to sign Sporting defender Ousmane Diomande. We talked about that. Gazzetta, Como keen on Fiorentina forward Moise Kean. Foot Mercato, Juve forward Luis Openda is interested in a switch to Lyon. So that's your rundown of all of those. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I missed in my work. Where's my legal pad? Oh, okay. Let's see. So we mentioned Sudamericana, Actually, let's mention Sudamericana with matches. Let's see. Tonda Eckert, FIGC. We mentioned all that stuff. Okay. So getting into the return of Sudamericana and getting into the return of Liga MX from the midweek last night. So if we go into South America, where are we calling it here? Let's see. Competitions. You don't have it listed? That's disappointing. Okay, that's strange. All right, so we'll skip that for the moment, considering that there's action tonight. Liga MX yesterday. And tonight, as we are in the aperture tonight, well, actually, it's in 2 days. Atlante and their return hosting Club America, and Tijuana hosting León. That is Friday night football. That is both at 11 o'clock Eastern time. So the return of Atlante to the league in Liga MX, that is going to happen Friday. Yesterday, Pumas knocked off Toluca 2-1 at the Estadio Nemesio Diaz at a plus 475. Cruz Azul with a late goal second half beat Puebla by the score of 2-1. And they are that was a win at a minus 278. How am I not able to see a world maybe? Club friendlies, Uzbekistan. Where in the heck? So here we go. Copa Sudamericana. Where is? And don't tell me that you don't have it, because you do. Unfortunately, no participants can be displayed. No archived events available. Sorry, I call shenanigans. So how do you not have the Copa Sudamericana in there? All right, so fine. We're going to go to another. We're going to go to another provider and tell them that we are not in the state that we are in, and look at here. And so if we go here, not in that, but yes, Copa Sudamericana. Okay. So if we go here, then a big, so we have 3 matches today. Independiente Medellin at home favored against Vasco da Gama to plus 137, draws a plus 210, and the Vasco da Gama is a plus 220. Lanús and Cienciano is at 730. Lanús minus 300, and Cienciano is a plus 850. Sporting Cristal at 730 is an underdog hosting Red Bull Bragantino at a plus 230. Red Bull Bragantino is a plus 115, and your draw option is a plus 240. You have 3 matches on Thursday as Sudamericana rolls on. So, yes, the Copa Sudamericana is up and running, and it was where's my results? You're not giving me anything in the past tense, but okay. All right, so those are your 3 matchups tonight in Copa Sudamericana. You can catch that at BN at Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here. Great to catch up with Dylan. Great to catch up with David Arrowsmith. Remember his 2 books. It is Narcoball and Killing Maradona. You can get them on the Amazons and get them in a bunch of places. And so I'm going to be buying them, and I'm going to see if I can get him at some point to sign them or something like that. So we'll see what the latest is in grabbing all of that is attached to what is going on here in and around the planet. But great to catch up with the 2 of them. Buy David's books or buy the digital copies, one of the 2, because I'm buying the hard copies. I just like buying the hard copies of books. Once again, come back tomorrow. We're going to bet lead off with the folks from Barrie, Ontario, and find out about the move of Toronto FC to Barrie and what they're going to be building and what the footprint is as the MLS Next Pro continues to grow. Then we'll talk about everything that happened in Major League Soccer last night, including Atlanta United. Power Hour, hour number 2. It's Nino and Nico getting you through the rest of the day, and that is your Thursday. Friday, it's going to be our friend Margaret Fleming from Front Office Sports, and hopefully catch up with our friends from Apple TV and find out what's going on at Beyond Goals Mentoring. So that's the rundown for the rest of the week. Thanks for dropping by, as you always do. For everybody here at SDH, I'm just John. It's another go-round of SDH AM. Enjoy your action tonight. We'll talk about it all here tomorrow. Atlanta Soccer Tonight obviously is not soccering tonight because of Atlanta United, and that is on 92.9 The Game in the Odyssey app starting at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock with kickoff a little after 8 with Mike and Jason. Abe and Maddie will be inside the studios in Colony Square at 92.9 The Game. So since that is the end of the show, mucho plati, I'll play it safe. David, I hope that you have worn out a small child before kickoff. Really hope you have, and you got a little bit of time to fiddle with it. I think it's going to be an 8:25 kick, but keep an eye on it. Short-term agreements: Arif Kovac, Toto Majub, Ignacio Suarez Curry helping out Atlanta, Junior Alonso eligible for selection, and Paulo Diaz still working on visas. You do not have Sergio Santos. You do not have Jay Fortune. Matt Edwards is day-to-day, and we'll keep an eye on all of the injuries for Atlanta United going forward. So for everybody here at SDH, mucho plati, I'll play it safe. Since it is the end of the show, it means I get to do this. We'll catch up with you tonight with Atlanta United, tomorrow in a little less than 22 hours for SDH AM. Be good. We'll see you in a bit.